What's good, fellow wrestling fans? This is Kevin. Thank you for tuning in to the Two Bros Wrestling Show. I just got through watching SummerSlam. How was your SummerSlam weekend? That's what we're here to talk about. SummerSlam in all its glory, the highs, the lows, how our predictions panned out, what we thought of every single match. We're going to get into match by match analysis here in just a moment, but let's just talk the overall. As is the case when you have these new multi night spectacular than others, but overall, how can you miss SummerSlam? It's the second biggest show of the year. Highly recommend that everyone tune in. We had surprise returns. We had some really good action. We had some things that did not translate as well as we may have hoped. But I'd say overall, more good than bad. I think that there's one thing that continues to plague WWE PLEs in the ESPN era, and that probably too short of matches for both the in-person audience and the television viewing audience as well. I think that we do well in our main events to allocate time for those, but in the preliminary matches, I think in general a good 6 more minutes to most of these contests would have been to the benefit of those matches and the participants therein. Your mileage may vary on that, but we'll get into the specifics here in a moment. I'll say it looked good on camera as well. I know that coming in to the big show, part of the conversation was around tickets maybe not selling when they were offering $25 tickets just to get in the building. I know we had that conversation back when WrestleMania season hit, and I was lucky enough to be in person for WrestleMania and can tell you there were not any empty seats really to be found. They were sporadic. It looked good, both on camera and in person. If you were in person, I'd love to know what your SummerSlam experience was. So please put that in the comments. I will say, as a viewer on ESPN Unlimited, there were times where the camera would catch the fact that there were sections behind the hard camera, behind the screens, upper levels that were obviously empty, not sold, or sparsely sold. But overall, I thought that the production team did a good job of making the building look good on television. So with that, I will say that we start match one on night one on ESPN Unlimited. That is also a change. They stopped giving away the first hour for free on linear television. I will say that if you're paying for these, I believe that's a benefit. I understood the reason why they wanted to try to hook people into buying more, but yet they were giving away some of the best matches of the night. And once you realize that over the course of multiple months and multiple PLEs, that, hey, I can tune into ESPN or ESPN Unlimited and maybe see the match that I wanted to see and not worry about the rest, probably was a self-defeating effort for the WWE production team to be giving away such good matches and not just minor matches on free television, and maybe was hurting the overall buy through of ESPN Unlimited. This also was the first time ESPN Unlimited was available to subscribers of YouTube TV. That would include myself. So for those of us who subscribe to the world's largest cable streaming service, then this was the first time in a while since the Peacock era that we were able to get the PLEs, which was great. So all of that, the functionality worked well. Hopefully, if you were a YouTube TV subscriber, being able to watch the PLEs again for the first time in a while, your experience was as smooth as mine. If so, or if not, please put that in the comments as well. I'd be curious to see how others' experience compared to mine. So now let's just dive into the action, right? We start night one out hot with Liv Morgan. Triple H was asked specifically about putting this off with a banger, and he knew that he could trust these two women to do that, and that they did. As I mentioned earlier, these matches were maybe shorter than I would have liked. It clocked in at just over 13 minutes. I think you could have gone 15 to 20 with these two women, and it would have been an even better match. But it was a great match for the women's title. Liv Morgan was, to the surprise of some, the winner here. It was her first defense, despite the fact that she won the belt all the way back at WrestleMania. So I thought that maybe they weren't interested in her as the champion. So I had predicted that they were going to move on from Liv as the champion and go to Io Sky. Completely fine to be wrong here. You'll see that a lot. A lot of my predictions were wrong. So I will just predicate that right now, that I missed a lot of these. If you're a longtime viewer of the show, you'll know that typically we have Doug on here providing his predictions as well. And if you have watched in the past, you'll know that Doug has a terrible track record. He's usually always wrong. And so I'm going to just blame it on him and his absence. In tribute to him, I wrongly predicted many of these contests just so that we get Doug's perspective in here. Just kidding, of course. This next one was one that I was also wrong about. I thought that I take that back. I was wrong about there being bloodline dissension. I thought in the 6-man that the bloodline would fracture around Fatu not wanting to do what the Usos wanted to do. That wasn't really the way that this one broke down. But still, the winners were the faces, the Odd Couple team of LA Knight, Solo Sikoa, and Royce Keys. This was fine. It was not very long. This was one of those matches, though, that I think that it's fine for it to not be very long, because this wasn't really a very consequential contest either way. Should have been kept short to give longer match times to some of the things that were more consequential. A bit surprised that it was a relatively clean victory by the Odd Couple team, but it is what it is. No harm, no foul. This next contest, though, I think could have gone a bit longer and would have benefited from it. But that was the match between Fatal Influence and the Bella Twins with Paige. This was the shortest match. The shortest match of night one of the shortest matches of the weekend. Fatal Influence has been stars since they arrived on the main roster, and they were treated as such in this match as well. I wrongly had predicted that the fact that Nikki Bella was returning to in-ring competition would mean that she probably was not going to lose. Her team was not going to lose. I really should have seen coming the fact that the Bella Twins reunited would turn on Paige and could lose that way, blaming Paige for the loss and then turning on her, which is what happened here. Actually, that was good booking that I'm fine with, and that Fatal Influence is the right team to win at this point in time. JC Jane, Fallon Henley, and Lainey Reed all are future stars in this company. JC already has all the intangibles, so let's keep them strong. We should probably do it in more than 7 minutes, though, and the match itself had moments where it was clunky, quite obviously, honestly, and maybe that's part of the reason also that we had such a short match, is because it just wasn't clicking. There also was an apparent injury in this match that was legit. Brie Bella came up a little lame, holding and clutching her shoulder. That does appear to be a legitimate injury. Maybe there was some spots they couldn't do because of that. Whatever the reason, we had a 7-minute match on a 3-hour pay-per-view, but the right team won. Fatal Influence goes over. Now we get back to what in many people's minds should have been the main event. I know in our preview, we debated whether or not it was best to have the Hell in a Cell end the whole night one PLE. That is what WWE decided to do. But the result of doing that meant that you took your world title match, the undisputed WWE Championship match, and had it on the preliminary. Something that CM Punk, I think, was a bit maybe offended by, at least if you heard his post event comments about whatever match he was in, he's the main event. I'm sure he and Cody would have liked to end the night. It would have been hard to end the night better than WWE did on night one. So I think the placement here for that regard makes sense. It is also the match that in length was as long as the first three contests combined. Again, that makes sense. Longest match of the night. It went a half an hour. You have two old school wrestling personalities here. And I don't just mean old in the terms of the fact that they're not the youngest guys on the roster, although that is part of the reason why you don't have a very short contest. That's why you have some stalling. That's why you have some rest holds. But you also have two old school pros that know how to build the tension out in a large contest like this to make it feel more substantial and get the fans invested, wanting to see you go to gear 2, gear 3. And that is what they did. They took the fans on a journey for that 30 minutes, and that they did a great build up to this about the friends who maybe aren't as much friends as you would think when it comes down to the fact that there is a very significant championship on the line. Friendships have to be set aside. What you had in execution was CM Punk winning, but Cody Rhodes having a very good out for losing. And that was maybe another reason why it was okay to have this in the penultimate spot instead of ending the night, because maybe fans would have not have cared for the outside interference that we got that ended this match if it was ending the entire night. Randy Orton returned. We saw him for the first time since WrestleMania when he came up short in his match against Cody Rhodes. He came back for a little revenge, and that meant that CM Punk goes over, not necessarily cleanly. Punk didn't realize what had happened. He didn't see the interference, so he has an out for taking advantage of the cheating, essentially. It wasn't necessarily on his behalf. It was just more Randy getting revenge for himself and CM Punk being fortunate enough to benefit from it. This leads to two roads that now remain open, no pun intended, but both do involve Cody. Cody has the legitimate gripe that he still needs a one-on-one match with CM Punk that does not have interference. And since we haven't gone to the well too many times with that matchup, I imagine it's something we will see again in the future, that when they're ready, they can open it up. But it also continues the series that we had through WrestleMania season, where Randy Orton and Cody Rhodes now have unfinished business that they still need to attend to. I imagine that is most of what Cody will do for his fall with Randy's return until he can put him completely in the rear view and then go back to concentrating on championship titles, which is probably good. Cody has been around the world title for the last few years now. You can't stay at the top forever, so moving him down to semi-main events probably makes sense to get him fresh again and before we put him back in title contention. So completely fine for that. And also completely fine for this final contest. And the main event of night one was the Hell in a Cell match. It was the blow-off match between Obafemi and Brock Lesnar to break their 1-1 tie moving into the Hell in a Cell. It did not go terribly long. They probably could have done more with the Hell in a Cell structure. But those two quibbles aside, this was an excellent, hard-hitting match that lived up to the hype of the first two. And it had the right winner as well. We didn't anticipate, when I did the predictions, we didn't anticipate that this one would go long because their first two contests did not go long. So adding the Hell in a Cell structure does provide, I think, some anticipation of it's going to be a grander scale match than what we had seen before. And while it wasn't necessarily in length, I do think that they had enough of the brutality that it would suffice for a Hell in a Cell match. No blood, but we did have some very brutal hard hits from both men. We had the memorable scene of Brock Lesnar ripping the canvas from the mat to expose the boards underneath. And even with that, was unable, despite delivering a tombstone to those boards, which looked great, was unable to put Obafemi away. The storyline here to begin was that based on our first two matches, Oba knows that Brock likes to start fast and strong and try to put things away before we get deep into a contest. He tries this again in the third match, but Oba is too much and cannot be taken that quickly advantage of as happened in their second contest. And so the frustration of Brock Lesnar not being able to put the Young Buck away was part of the story they were telling here. The fact that the last-ditch effort of exposing the boards was not enough to put Oba away was part of that story. When that did not work, it was pretty short order afterwards that Oba hits his finish. I do believe they intended for that finish to also be on the boards, because if you watch the replay, you can see Brock Lesnar look to the side to realize, like, oh, crap, we didn't land on the exposed boards. I don't think the fact that they didn't detract anything from the finish. Certainly didn't detract from the fact that the ending was all about what we had first thought we'd seen at WrestleMania, and that was Brock Lesnar doing the job for Obafemi to make Oba a star by giving him the rub on his way out. Is Brock on his way out? We don't know. They did not lean into it as they did at WrestleMania to pretend that Brock was retiring, telling not his final match. This is certainly among his final matches and one of his last acts as a main event performer is definitely going to be him endorsing Obafemi. Typically, this is done physically in the ring by just the act of laying down on your way out for another talent. Brock Lesnar took it to a different level here that you have to really respect, but he asked for a microphone and seemingly off script had Oba come back into the ring. And if you didn't get the message by what you just witnessed with the match, he made it clear with his language that this is the past, as he pointed to himself, and this is the future, as he pointed to Obafemi. He could not make it a more clear passing of the torch than that. And Oba is definitely in that Brock Lesnar mode, that role that Brock had early in his career of the young, freakish athlete who was a combat sports guy. Oba doesn't have that pedigree, but he has that look, and he already has shown that skill set and that aura that Brock had about him as being an unstoppable beast. This should push Oba to the top of the card. We know that Oba won King of the Ring, but then gave up his opportunity at SummerSlam to face for a world championship in order to take on Brock Lesnar. But there was nothing storyline-wise that says that means that he cannot pick up that stipulation at a different point. And I imagine that is where we go at some point now. And who doesn't want to see that match of Obafemi versus Roman Reigns? I don't know that we have to get to it quickly. I don't know that we have to do it at Survivor Series or anything, not to give away what's going to happen on night 2, but we just know that we got Oba and Roman somewhere down the line, and sign me up for it. I want to see him use that stipulation still. It has been since Bray Wyatt, since we have had one of the major world championships on the men's side held by someone under 30. And it's very obvious that despite the fact that many of these men are over, that WWE needs to make a concerted effort to elevate their young talent, which they appear to be doing. But the way to fully do that is to eventually let one of these 20-somethings break through as a main eventer, as a world champion. Oba is going to be that guy. When they do it is a matter of debate, but they have to do it, and that is where we're headed. Where we're headed after a pretty good night 1 is to night 2, which in my mind was less successful overall as far as in-ring, but also had some memorable moments and had the match of the weekend. So let's get to night 2 by starting with the match that I couldn't have predicted right because it wasn't the match that I previewed. We thought we were getting Finn Balor versus Sami Zayn for the #1 contendership. I thought that had the potential to be a show stealer, a one-on-one show stealer. And at first, when Nick Aldis comes out and announces that we are going to expand it by adding Gunther, I was disappointed, because as much as I like Gunther, I thought, well, that just means that the match that I was looking forward to now has a different dynamic. A three-way dance, he was going to turn this into a fatal Kevin Owens. That I did not see coming. There was a time all of that meant was a very warm and welcome return for Kevin Owens. With these 4 talent involved, though, an 8-minute match seems very shortchanging to these individuals. This match totally rode on the goodwill of Kevin Owens being back in the ring. Kevin Owens wins. I'm fine for that, for him to jump right back into a world title scene. He versus Punk is a fresher matchup that we have not had, so I think that was also the best path forward. It also allows Sami Zayn to continue to be aggrieved and go with the justice for Sami. I mean, he didn't see his best friend returning. He's already been screwed over once. He only had 9 days with the championship and had CM Punk come and pull the rug out from underneath him. And now WWE stacks the deck against him again. For his conspiracy-minded character, this is perfect fodder for whatever Sami does next. But they need to give him something good. And I would love to see Sami back towards the top of the card, challenging for the world championship, and this time getting a longer reign with it. Will that come against his good friend Sami Zayn one day? I think that would be awesome if that's the way that this works out. For now, though, we're going to have Punk versus Kevin Owens. Welcome back, Kevin. It was a decent match for the time that they had. They just didn't have enough time to do much. That leads us to our second match of night 2. We had our United States Championship defense, Trick Williams, defending that title against return I think we're having a bit of internet issues here, so I apologize for the internet playing with us there. Might I start with this Trick Williams Baron Corbin contest is that kind of over Lil Yachty. I think that he served his purpose. Doesn't really add anything. Trick Williams doesn't need a mouthpiece. Trick Williams is excellent on the mic, so I am fine if Baron Corbin surprise winning here over Trick Williams means that Trick Williams is already past the United States Championship and moves on to the world title scene. And he can do so without the Little Yachty character. I'm fine for that too. We haven't had an excellent track record of elevating former United States champions to that next level. So this better not be the end of the Trick Williams push, because Trick has everything that WWE needs right now, a young, charismatic performer that it would inject some new life and new blood into the top end of the card. So let's let that happen. As for what they do with Baron Corbin, Baron's solid. I don't think Baron's exciting. He doesn't have all the intangibles that a Trick Williams has. And I think that gets highlighted when you have a match between the two where you see that one man has it and the other man, obviously, by comparison, does not. He is fine. He is solid. I don't know where they go for his next opponent. or how they make him more interesting moving forward than they did in his first run in WWE. But that is up to the writers now to put something behind Baron Corbin to make us interested in him and to give something meaningful for Trick Williams to do from here on out. As I mentioned in the concept of interim champions. So that soured me a bit on this match to begin with. All the women involved here, Chelsea Green, Charlotte Flair, Jade Cargill, Lash Legend, Tiffany Stratton, all in many of her memorable, some of the more death-defying shots. Ladder matches can be clunky anyway. This one was particularly clunky. Part of that is that Jade Cargill, for all of her physical attributes, is still green when it comes to certain things that maybe she shouldn't be asked to do. I think there was a couple of moments in this ladder match where she was asked to do more than she should have been asked. One most notable was her and Lash Legend attempting to catch Charlotte Flair. That was probably too dangerous a spot. The fact they missed her and she basically landed partially on her feet from a high, basically she was grasping the title at the time that a lot of bad things could have happened to Charlotte Flair considering her injury history and miles on that body. And you risked all that on the fact that you thought that Lash and Jade could catch her, and they did not. So I don't know if that risk was worth whatever reward they had hoped with that spot. But that was kind of indicative of this whole match. I will say it was a worthwhile match only because of the outcome, and that is the fact that Chelsea Green is your new interim women's championship. I wish that her first major world title win was for the actual championship and not the interim. I don't like that there's going to be an asterisk needs to be by this. That doesn't take away from the fact that Chelsea is someone that the fans organically have invested in, have let management know this is what we want, this is who we want. This dates back to the Unreal episode from last season where you have Michael Hayes on camera talking about Chelsea's role in the company being to build other stars, maybe not being the star herself. And that not only made Chelsea take some offense, the fans of Chelsea took a lot of offense to that too. It only helped in the groundswell of support for people wanting to see that, no, we don't think that about Chelsea. We don't have her defined as a talent who is only there to be a good worker and put other people over. We want to see her finally achieve the big win herself. I think that this is definitely a big win. It's certainly on one of WWE's biggest stages. It was in a stadium. It was on their second biggest PLE of the year. I wished it was for the actual women's championship and not the interim. But that quibble aside, when I previewed this match, I said that I did not care for the concept of the interim championship. But if there's one person that I would like to see win just because I, too, am invested in seeing Chelsea finally break that glass ceiling for herself, it would be Chelsea winning. Oftentimes, WWE uses these ladder matches as a way of dangling the carrot in front of us as fans as here's what you want. You're just inches away from getting it, but you're not going to get it. They didn't go that route this time. There was those hope spots where you thought that was the way they were going to go with it, as always, to make us think that Chelsea had a shot, but she really didn't have a shot. But then they pulled the trigger on it. I would hope that when Rhea Ripley returns, that Chelsea Green maybe it gets an opportunity to somehow get past her and move on as the legit unified women's champion. But that is for down the road. For now, it was a legitimate feel-good moment, and I'm here for it. I'm all in on Chelsea Green, and I'm happy for Chelsea. And despite not liking the interim championship concept, I'm completely fine. And like Chelsea Green, we go from emotional moments to something completely different, and that was the human money. Danhausen, Dominic Mysterio, by any measure, this was supposed to be pure comedy. On that, judging it on that and not on technical abilities and star ratings, I still think that this match was maybe well intentioned to serve a spot as the break in the comedy. But when I like Danhausen. I guess that's what I'm wanting to say is I do like Danhausen, but I also feel like Danhausen is one of those gimmicks that work better in small doses and sometimes gets exposed when you actually have to have a match. Not that he can't have a match, but if you're going to have a match, you need to make these things sparing. And I understand that SummerSlam is one of those opportunities. It's a big card. You want to get him on it. But as far as the limited number of Danhausen matches to this point go, there wasn't a whole lot to this one. There wasn't the surprise. There wasn't the comedy. There wasn't the the false direction where something happens that is memorable. It just kind of played out the way you would have expected, and it was the shortest match of the weekend, which probably it needed to be, but also it was so short that there was no memorable surprises. They didn't pull someone in from the sports world to help Danhausen or something that would maybe make at least people go, oh, yeah, I remember that match, that time that Danhausen brought in this member of the Knicks, or this Wilson cursing him. No, it just, we got the mini Housens who we've seen many times before. We got the cursing with the explosion, which we've seen many times before. And I was a bit surprised that they went the obvious direction and let Danhausen win in relatively paint by number fashion. So this was a bit of a clunker for me, and I think harms the Danhausen character overall. And the fact that you have someone that sells lots of merch, kids like him, audiences like him, but you eventually have to get him in the ring. And when you do, you need to keep it memorable. And they didn't do anything here that we haven't done before with Danhausen. So they need to consider that moving forward and what we do next with Danhausen to make sure that character doesn't get stale, and you don't take your cash cow here and overexpose him to a point that we have fans wanting to see him lose and turning on him. That would be the opposite of what you would want with a gimmick character who is right now over. But you really challenge that moving into this match with one of the worst segments that WWE has produced on television, that whole concert with Danhausen and Joe Hendry. So you need to just be careful. WWE treading some dangerous waters here, in that they have something, but they don't know what to do with it now. So yes, we need to make sure we protect the Danhausen character here. This was not the way to do it. Dom will be fine. He will get his heat back. He's going to be main eventing Triple Mania here in a matter of a month. So his character long term, I do not worry about. Danhausen's character, though, could be wearing thin. Let's see if they course correct. They go from maybe the worst match of the weekend to one of the better matches of the weekend, and certainly one of the feel-good stories. This one also has, ironically enough, its origins in comedy. Chad Gable gets the El Grande Americano gimmick as a comedy bit, and it seemed like something that only had a limited shelf life and a limited possibility for what can be done with that. And what seemed like something that should be short-lived has turned into a redemption arc of grand proportions, no pun intended. But he took that character, got it over because he got injured. It's one of those things that I believe that because he got injured, it worked to his advantage in the long run, because that meant the short-lived, probably planned to be short-lived character of El Grande Americano got passed along to Ludwig Kaiser, which led to an instance when Chad Gable returned, that we could have a match between the two El Grande Americanos. But in the meantime, what no one could have anticipated is that Ludwig Kaiser would take that comedy character, take it to Mexico and AAA, and leverage that new alliance that WWE has with AAA, and get that character over organically with the Latin crowd in such a way that it actually meant more when Chad came back and tried to take it away as the villain. It led to one of the greatest matches that we have seen this calendar year. Definitely the best match that WWE has produced under the AAA. Giving him has never been able to break through before and finally capture a singles champion in WWE with the fan support. I mean, the stars aligned to put him in this spot for a SummerSlam that was taking place in his hometown, where even as over as Penta is, the hometown audience wanted to see Chad Gable win. I predicted that Chad would win, and that was the way that WWE booked. And Lucha and Latin audiences, so Penta will be fine. This was the time for them to put the momentum on Chad. It has been all up to them up to this point, WWE, as to, okay, Chad's put himself in a position, got himself over, had that match with Ludwig. These two men both went from lower mid card to both being characters that the fans have invested in. So if you were not going to ever invest in Chad Gable, then maybe Chad should have lost this. But if you were going to see how far we can ascend Chad Gable, this was absolutely the time to make this title move. And WWE, to their credit, did so. Now let's see Chad carry a championship. Let's see the fans, how they invest in this title reign and where we go from here. It was an emotional night. It was a great match. It was the right winner. I would have liked to have seen a few more minutes added to this one. That can be said for most of the matches throughout SummerSlam, but it was a legitimate feel-good moment, made more so by Chad's real emotions that he expressed afterwards, his family being invited into the ring and him just relishing this moment and opportunity. We had a lot of feel-good moments on night two, between Kevin Owens' return, Chelsea Green's surprise win, and then the foreseen by many but still emotional moment of watching Chad Gable finally win that singles championship that has eluded him all these previous years. So very good work here by the storytellers, which takes us to the final match of the night. And there's good storytelling here as well. In fact, I'd say that match of the weekend was the main event of night two, and that is Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins fighting for the World Heavyweight Championship in an epic contest. 33 minutes. It told a story throughout that 33 minutes that encapsulated the last 12 years of history that has built up between these two men. You can go back to the well anytime with Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins, and I have no doubt at some point in the future WWE will again. But whenever they have broken the glass to put these two in a match against each other, it has been with the understanding that this was not the end, that nothing was truly settled. Roman never was able, despite the fact that he has amassed such star power, he was never able to put the betrayal of Seth Rollins all those years ago behind him. He couldn't overcome Seth Rollins. He couldn't, whenever they did match up, Seth would come out on top. And for everything that Roman has accomplished, Seth Rollins remained the thorn in his side. The betrayal and breakup of the original Shield all those years ago was still haunting him. And that was the story that they laid out over 33 well-paced minutes that really dug deep into these collective histories of these two competitors. But Roman finally did. He finally overcome his Seth Rollins demon, and the way that they told that story was by recalling the past. They even had a Dean Ambrose call out, the third member of the Shield, who obviously is in AEW now, but not forgotten, and was actually mentioned by name on commentary, and then both men using his finishing move in an attempt to put away the other. There was a lot of verbalization between these two former Shield members as well, where that really played into the story, the tight focus that the production crew got on both men's faces as they trash talked each other, as the bloodline gets mentioned, as the Shield gets mentioned, as we have all the near falls that we go to in the final act of this story, when it seemed with the ref bumps, which I wish they wouldn't have done a ref bump in the world title match on night one, because that would have made the ref bump mean more when you had the world title match on night two. That quibble aside, that ref bump was necessary to give the specter of, oh, here we go again, because now we're going to see the bloodline come out and help Roman, which is exactly what Seth thought would happen, and told Roman as much during the course of the match, and yet it didn't happen. And to his credit, let's just lay it on the line here. Roman Reigns had one of the more memorable world title reigns in modern WWE history. It was historic in its length. It was epic and great in its storytelling. But one thing that did happen during the course of those many years that Roman had that run was that by the end, the matches themselves become predictable. They became perfunctory in the storytelling of, and here is where the bloodline interfere and Roman comes out again. They became a bit it became tropes, and it became a bit not just predictable but boring towards the end, quite honestly. Whereas the character of Roman Reigns on a week-to-week basis was more interesting than the payoffs on the PLEs. So that became the legacy at the end of Roman's last run, to take nothing away from its significance and how well told it was storyline wise. But let's give the devil his due here. In this new version of Roman Reigns and this current world title run, he has done everything to shake off those detractors by having some of the best matches of his career. Punk and Reigns at Mania was one of the all-time great WrestleMania main events. And then here we have Roman producing one of the classic SummerSlam main events with his former Shield partner, Seth Rollins, all on his own, in ring, using psychology, using professional wrestling, not just using the crutch of the bloodline and interference. And I like the fact they teased, oh, here we go again with the ref bump, but then didn't do it. Let's talk about the other card that Roman didn't pull, which was integral to the storytelling here. And that was the beautiful storytelling moment of the 12-year rewind of, now the tide has turned. The shoe is on the other foot. The ref is down. Seth's back is turned. Roman has the chair in his hands. After 12 years, he is finally going to be able to do to Seth Rollins what Seth Rollins did to him to break up the Shield. When that moment came, Seth was prone. He was vulnerable. He was facing the screen so he could see, oh, great, here it comes. Here is my comeuppance. Here is the revenge being reenacted, except this time Roman's going to be the one that does it to me. And he had resigned himself to the fact of, here is my fate. This is how it ends. And Roman, rather than leaning into revenge, takes the chair, tosses it aside, lets Seth turn around and say, no, I'm going to be the bigger man here. I am not going to do to you what you did to me. And in doing that, however this ends, it will be the end of me obsessing over what you did. It's going to be the end of me obsessing over my inability to overcome your betrayal. It is going to be the end of me worrying about how the Shield ended. And instead, this is going to be how Roman Reigns and Seth it was the perfect ending that you could possibly write for the 12 years that preceded it. So when they do decide to go again, and I'm sure they will once again have a match at some point in the future between Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins. But for all real purposes, the end of the story of the Shield and the 12 years of bitterness between Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins, they had the perfect storyline conclusion to that by Roman simply throwing the chair away, choosing to take Seth out one on one, man to man, and not do the cheap shot. To be the bigger man and overcome anyway was overcoming his demons and finally allowed him to overcome Seth Rollins himself. Perfect storytelling by WWE in this regard. And they did so at the end of a really, really good match that was well performed in the ring, and then just had the bonus of the excellent storytelling to bring this to an end. And if they wanted to put a bow on it, they couldn't have done it any better. That once Roman finally conquered Seth, he off once again, the bigger man. I'm going to offer you a fist bump in the grand tradition of the Shield to show that we are still brothers. That I have put that behind me. I have put you behind me, but now no hard feelings. Let's move on. And it was an epic end to an epic contest. And was the best match by far of the weekend, one of the better storyline that WWE has told this year, and I think was satisfactory to all involved, regardless of who you wanted to ultimately win this one. With that, we come to an end of this episode of the Two Bros Wrestling Show, recapping SummerSlam Night 1 and 2. Thank you very much for tuning in. As Doug would say, go watch some wrestling, like, subscribe. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you down the road.